This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I was trying to get it how I live. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs, I don't get tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. Get it, get fly.
And we are still not tired on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres. I am your host, Vito and Doc, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner and Fawn, who took off this week from Tigers Talk, but I allowed him to do that and allowed it to slide. John Charles Macaroon, the Doc from Doc and Jock as well. John, how are you doing? You had a couple of days off earlier in the week, and happy Thanksgiving. And how was your Thanksgiving at the same time?
Great. Vito, always enjoy talking to you. Today's the day. Michigan, Ohio State. When this podcast drops, you better drop it before the game.
Oh, man, now I have to. Yeah, you're right. Before noon.
Exactly.
Noon is a big game.
I can't wait to go to Tap and Barrel in Shelby Township. I'm going to sit and watch and enjoy probably the biggest college football game of the season, Michigan versus Ohio State. Thanksgiving was awesome, going to the family of my sister's in-laws, have a good time. And like I've said in previous years, I'm a guy that has to kind of go around, so meaning that I go visit a couple houses. So I'm going to go visit my sister's family, side of the family, and then I'm going to go to my wife's mother's house for some desserts. So I'll be up and about, and definitely for me, it's great because being that I'm busy, I do a lot of different things with the podcast, the practice, other type stuff. Just to take a couple days off is nice because of the fact that I'm going 6 days, sometimes 7, and to varying degrees. Like I said, I'm not working 12-hour days every single day, but I'm doing stuff every single day. Just to take 2 days off, just to sit back and hang out and relax and not do so many podcasts. It was really great, refreshing. Now I'm enjoying the opportunity now to talk to you. We got a great guest this week, a former Super Bowl champ. Who's on the show this week?
4-time Super Bowl champion with the San Francisco 49ers, Jesse Sapolu. We pulled in a big one through the help of Justin Sassante of Legacy Football, the Legacy Football org, and, Justin, the National Director of Football Ops at Legacy. And Jesse now is going to do some work with the linemen. At Legacy Football, he already runs this academy called the Men in the Trenches Linemen Academy and Super Lineman National Tournament. So I asked Jesse about where that idea came from to start that Lineman Academy and some other stuff. Obviously, got to pick his brain about playing for the likes of legendary Bill Walsh. He was his head man, and George Seifert with the 49ers, playing alongside Joe Montana, then Steve Young, 2 legendary Hall of Fame quarterbacks he got the chance to play alongside. So lots of stuff to get to with him. But first, on tap is a prediction. I want to get to this at least. A prediction made by Karan Higdon. A guarantee by Karan, a former guest on your one-on-one podcast here on the DSP Network Airwaves, Doc, in which he guaranteed a Michigan victory over OSU today. What do you think about that boldness from Karan?
Well, here's the reason why it's an important topic, and one in which I think it's interesting to talk about, is that when Jim Harbaugh was a player for Michigan, he had made a guarantee versus Ohio State, and previous reporters had covered him and paid attention to it, and so they had a line of questioning, and Karan Higdon, in that presser earlier in the week, had kind of been very confident and said that, look, I really think that my team is good, and I think that we're coming together, we're playing well, and so the reporter, Larry Lage from the AP, a great reporter, and a reporter that maybe will show up on this podcast next week because I did reach out to him, he kind of said that the way in which Karan was speaking kind of led to the question. Michigan fans got upset because it was put like, hey, will you guarantee the victory, Karan? And so the question was put to him. And so people who are opposed to that will say, look, you know, guarantees are supposed to be authentic. They're supposed to be a situation in which they just kind of come about through talk. You don't just ask for it because it comes across as being clickbaity. But Larry's a professional. He's covered sports a long time, and I don't begrudge somebody for asking the question. And I think that's the point where I think a lot of people are getting mad at the media, and we're in this culture now where the media is being criticized, and I respect that. I think that holding the media to high standards is fine. I think that if you're somebody that's paying attention to what people write and the slant in which they take, the biases in which they take, I don't have a problem with that. I would say the issue is if you're mad, Karan Higdon said, yeah. You know, the way in which that went down was Larry asked the question, Karan kind of rolls his eyes and looks at his teammate, looks to the right, and just goes, you know what, yeah, I'm going to say it. Because of the fact that he's confident, and I have no problem with Karan saying it, because how are you going to really answer that? But if you're mad, I think that Karan could have avoided this becoming news by just saying, look, that's a great question. I understand everybody thinks this game is huge. My job is to go out there and get a ton of yards, and I think if I'm successful, we're going to have a great opportunity to win. That's how you answer it. And I think we have to just shift our focus more to the people answering the questions than those asking. Because, Vito, here's what I tell people in my practice. There's a certain aspect of life that you can control, and there's a certain aspect of life that you can't control. You can't control what questions people are going to fly at you in the media. Yeah, they may be doing it for attention, but that's the name of the game. I mean, we do a podcast to try and get as many listeners as possible. Each week we get a couple new subscribers, more downloads, more relationships. That's the whole purpose of it. If we broadcast into air and made no money, we wouldn't be really doing it. I just wouldn't find the time. I wouldn't find it valuable. And two, you look at it and you go, you already know what the media is trying to do. They're going to ask questions with the hope of maybe making some news, getting a video, and getting some content that can be pushed. So it is up to the person answering the question to exactly know what to say. And that's why people are mad at Matthew Stafford and Matt Patricia of the Lions, is that they don't answer questions. They just give you the exact PC answer all the time. I don't have a problem with it. Karan answered it. That's the way it is. Now, people reacted on both sides. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with Karan. I don't have a problem with Larry Lage for asking the question. I think it's a great question. I mean, now, I definitely understand those that are critical that come out and say, oh, you're not supposed to kind of ask for that kind of stuff. But, you know, Larry pointed it out and he said, look, the way in which Karan was talking, it lended to the question, hey, could you guarantee a victory? And I think it adds spice to the game. I'm definitely interested to see how Karan's going to perform. I want to see if he's going to have a great performance in a massive game. I want to see how this rivalry takes shape. And I like the fact that, you know what, Michigan has been on the downside of this rivalry for damn near a decade. Speak up. You got a good team, 10 wins consecutively, number 4 in the nation. You're the favorite. Go out there and handle your business. That's the name of the game. It's not going to affect the outcome.
Well, I would say it maybe was a leading question, and I guess you could say it wasn't. Maybe it was a leading question. It was a leading question. Now, the media, especially us as podcasters, we're looking for those bold answers and guarantees because we want as many listeners as possible and people to download our podcast, as many people to download our podcast as possible. So a lot of it now in media, too, is clickbait. I'm not going to accuse Larry Lage of this. He's a credible writer from the AP, has a lot of experience, years of experience behind him as a journalist and a highly credible journalist. So, you know what? As a player, you have to know what the media is coming at you with, right? That the media is looking to get a guarantee out of you. Karan should have known that, and guess what? He went ahead and guaranteed it. He didn't have to guarantee the victory still. Just because maybe it was, and I think it was definitely a leading question from Larry Lage. Guess what? Lage knew what he was doing, and Karan should have known what he was doing. And he still guaranteed the victory. Karan didn't have to go ahead and guarantee the victory. So it was really on the player, too, and Karan in this circumstance where Karan, once again, he could have avoided, could have brushed off that question completely and said, I'm going to let my play on the field on Saturday talk for me. I'm not going to talk right now about a victory for ourselves. I'll talk and celebrate after that game on Saturday, today now, against OSU.
So did you have a problem with it in terms of how the entire press conference went? Because also there were videos that came out that Bush also came out and said some things as well. So it happens. People are going to talk.
And that was more under wraps. Like, nobody even talked about that. That was brushed under the rug that Bush did, in so many words, guarantee the victory as well himself. So, I mean, guys are going to be bold. And you know what? In these types of games, I think there's always somebody on the team that guarantees a victory, and it can come back to backfire. But guess what? If Michigan loses today now against Ohio State, are we really going to blame it on Karan Higdon for his big mouth and exclaiming a victory, predicting a victory for him and his teammates? Come on, man. I'm not going to blame it on Karan now all of a sudden. Now, if he has a stinko game, then you can start saying, well, Karan, maybe you should have kept your mouth quiet.
Exactly. That's going to be one of the factors that heavily dictates the reaction, is how well Karan plays. So we got to get your opinion, Vito. What's going to happen today? Do you think Michigan exercises the demons? Do they go into Columbus, get the victory, make everybody happy, and really set forth the new course of Michigan football? Because it's a watershed game. Everybody's looking to it. It's the biggest game. Everybody wants to pay attention to it today, noon. Everybody's going to be watching and paying attention to what happens. Tell us. What's going to happen today?
Well, I talked to Shane Morris earlier in the week. I think he said 28-10 Michigan victory. Now, I knew he was going to not go out on a limb. Now, I don't think Michigan wins by that margin. I think Michigan wins by a touchdown and or 10 points. 10 points at the very most Michigan wins by. And I think Michigan is able to control what Ohio State does offensively. And I think enough to get the W with Shea Patterson making a couple of big throws and enough big throws to get that W for Michigan today. In a close one. Once again, Michigan wins by 10 at the very most. How about your opinion on this matchup?
I think it's going to be a classic game, a little bit closer. I do think Michigan has the edge because of the fact that Ohio State's defense has been shredded. Can they improve enough in 7 days to stop Michigan's offense? I don't think so. I think that Michigan's going to take away the victory, but a very close game. I think in the neighborhood of 2017, last possession, back and forth. It's going to be a game in which you're going to see multiple momentum swings. You're going to see back and forth action. But I think Michigan has that defense that can travel. They're hungry enough, and there's a mismatch in terms of Michigan's offense versus Ohio State's defense. I don't see Ohio State's defense doing enough to stop Karan Higdon and Chris Evans. You got Tariq Black maybe that can come back and contribute. You got Donovan Peoples-Jones. You got Shea Patterson that can extend plays and make some things happen with his feet. And I do think maybe there's a chance that they do maybe air it out and let Shea Patterson go in a big game on the national stage. So I think it's going to be in the neighborhood of Michigan 20, Ohio State 17, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Ohio State takes this one down. It's a big game. I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be fun.
Oh my gosh, it'll be a lot of fun. And the biggest game of the season. Not only a huge rivalry game, but the biggest contest of the season with playoff implications aplenty on the line for both squads.
Before we get to our guest, I want to thank our sponsors that make this show possible, Top Cat Sales and the Legacy Football Organization. They're great sponsors. They work with the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, so definitely check out Top Cat Sales and the Legacy Football Organization. All right, Vito, let's get Jesse Sapolu on the phone line.
And now joining us on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres is four-time Super Bowl champion Jesse Sapolu. He played in 182 games from 1983 to 1997 with one franchise, the San Francisco 49ers, and quite the franchise to play with when you did, Jesse. Thanks for joining us on Two Bad Hombres.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for doing this once again, and happy Thanksgiving as well to you and yours.
Same to you.
So I'll start off with this. Did you ever envision spending your whole entire NFL career with one franchise?
Well, at the time when I came in the league, there was no such thing as a true free agent. So, I wasn't really looking at the possibility of going anywhere unless you got traded. But as the years went by, once I started approaching double digit, like 10 years, I knew it was important for me to retire in one uniform. And thank God that happened.
And what was it like playing for two legendary NFL headmen in Bill Walsh and then George Seifert? And what kind of lessons did you learn and take away from those two guys?
Well, obviously, Bill Walsh was an innovator. When I came into the league, we were the originators of what they called, even today, the West Coast offense. They've added some run pass option type of things to the offense. But you look at teams like Philadelphia that won it last year, a lot of different teams still running the West Coast offense, but they've added some twist to it. And Bill Walsh was why it's called the West Coast offense, and to play for an offensive mind like that, for me coming from Hawaii, was an honor to do so.
How about lessons on and off the football field as well from Bill Walsh and George Seifert?
Well, we set a standard and we held everyone accountable to that standard. And I think that's the reason why we were able to win at least 10 games for like 20 straight years. And within that 20 years, we won 5 Super Bowls. A lot of people said at that time, we wish we could have bottled it and keep it in the bottle. But, there's a team in New England that has set a standard. And it doesn't matter what kind of superstar you are. You come in and you fall in line with what the standard of that organization is. And they've discovered that. And that's what's in common with our dynasty years, is that no one superstar comes in and tries to do it their own way. Everybody has to put the team first.
And you guys were quite dynastic. I mean, to say the least, and you were the Patriots before the Patriots became the Patriots. And now the Patriots are the modern-day dynasty. But can you elaborate further? You already started talking about it, but about the similarities between your teams with the Niners and these modern-day New England Patriots.
Well, if you look at our dynasty, believe it or not, a lot of some of our players that became superstars are from FCS schools. They're not Division I powerhouses. Like the Charles Haleys, the Steve Wallace, the John Taylors, the Jerry Rices, that came from Mississippi Valley. I came from the University of Hawaii, which wasn't a powerhouse at the time. So it just shows you that Bill Walsh was able to find talent through his ability to scout players. And all those players came in and fell in line with what was most important, and that's to set a standard, and we live by that standard. And if you look at New England, I mean, their quarterback, which was a 49er fan growing up watching us, he's a kid from San Mateo, but they got him in the 6th round. So, it's the luck of the draw. But at the same time, Tom Brady understood that standard and became the trendsetter as far as everybody that comes in. I remember he had to readjust his salary every single year so they can bring in some players to help them win Super Bowls, because that was the most important thing in his mind. And it's not an accident that Belichick and Brady are successful right now.
And then, Jesse, you had the chance to block for 2 legendary quarterbacks, Hall of Fame quarterbacks for all those years with the Niners. First with Joe Montana, and then later Steve Young. And you go right from Montana to Young. I mean, an incredible transition there from Montana to Young, as Young obviously was very capable and became this Hall of Fame quarterback, as I already said, himself. And what was it like playing alongside those 2 individuals? Once again, first with Montana and then Young at quarterback.
Well, looking back on it, we're very fortunate. There's teams that are just looking for quarterbacks, and yet, I protected a quarterback that's considered, one of the best of all times, at least the top 2 with Tom Brady coming into the discussion. But we had someone on the bench for about 4 years that ended up being a Hall of Famer. But at the same time, there's a lot of pressure. You got to protect those guys. That's not an easy thing to do, knowing that you got one of the best players at the most important position on the team, and yet you're directly involved in making sure that they stay healthy, because that's a big component of you becoming a champion.
Now, Jesse, another coach that was also heralded, that was part of that great San Francisco staff, was Mike Holmgren, a guy that worked with the quarterbacks and then the offense. What was he like as a coach, especially being a player that played on the offense?
Well, again, I was fortunate enough to play with some of the best offensive minds that were developed under Bill Walsh, and Mike Holmgren was one of the best. We wish we could have just been able to keep everyone, but like anything else, when you start winning a lot, everybody else tried to grab some of those successful assistant coaches because they wanted to find out, what was going on and what the secret is. And Mike, ended up becoming the head coach at Green Bay. One of my coordinators was Dennis Green, who ended up becoming a head coach in Minnesota. And Mike Shanahan was my last coordinator. So, we wish we could keep them all, but that's just not the way things happen.
Did you see all those guys turning out to be great NFL head coaches as they did?
Well, yeah. I mean, I knew, because I was directly involved with Holmgren, Dennis Green, and Mike Shanahan. But we also had one of the young coaches was an intern in our 89, 90 seasons when we went back to back. And his name was John Gruden. He was a guy that just broke down film and was running around, and then he was an intern with us. And then when Mike Holmgren got the job in Green Bay, took him as a wide receivers coach. But look at him today. He's one of the most successful analysts, and now a head coach that's making $100 million.
A lot of money there, yes. Now, was he as fiery back then as he is today?
Well, no. When you're an intern, but I could tell he was dedicated. He worked hard. He would come in at 4 a.m. This is before the internet, so every film that we wanted to watch had to be broken down, and it was on VHS. So, if we played Minnesota and I wanted to see film of us playing them 3 years earlier, I would send John Gruden to go look for that breakdown and make sure he put it together for me. And that was something that was, every time I requested it, it was done. And I knew that this was a dedicated young man, and it's not an accident that he's where he's at right now.
And John, we're hanging out with Jesse Sapolu and the former longtime center for all of those Super Bowl championship teams with the San Francisco 49ers. Once again, played from 83 until 97. So from the time he was a young guy, a young lad, until the time he was considered an old man in the league. And I mean, I got to say that there. But since then, Jesse, you've had the chance to found the Men in the Trenches Linemen Academy. Now, where did the idea for Men in the Trenches come from?
Well, when like you said, it's a good thing when people say you become an old man while you're still playing. That means you've lasted a long time. But when I first retired, I dedicated myself to my football career. But all of a sudden, I had to become a dad, and my sons were becoming teenagers, and they were about to play high school football. So I had to adjust to being a dad, and I found out that there's these combines that these kids go to make sure that they're getting ranked. And I took my sons to those combines, and I just felt like they weren't coached well enough as far as fundamentals. They did the 40-yard dash, the bench press, and all that stuff. And here in Orange County, where I live, was the first place where they had specialized quarterback training with the Carson Palmers when he was in high school, Matt Leinart and those guys. And I'm thinking, quarterbacks need specialized training, but offensive linemen, especially, and defensive linemen, people don't understand how much goes into the technique that they have to learn to become successful. And I started it slow with just my sons and some of their friends, but it has grown to the point where, when we first start our Men in the Trenches 16 Saturday off-season camps, we're looking at over 200 linemen. And that's not how it started, but we grew to that because of some of the success, and a lot of the kids have gotten scholarships from training at my academy.
I love the name, too, Men in the Trenches. I mean, that's absolutely perfect to describe these linemen, these big guys in the trenches, blocking and having all these guys, bigger dudes even coming at them and keeping their blocks. And I wanted to ask you, what skills do you specifically focus on with these linemen in this academy that you've put on now for all these years, Jesse?
Well, fundamentals, we start from the stance, and then you go from, fundamentals of just a single blocking, and then you start progressing to combination blocks, coming up to the second level. The number one goal for Men in the Trenches, I teach off of my experience from playing the game. I never go to any seminars. I just, whatever I look back on that made me grow as a player is what I insert into my academy. And for me, once I understood why I did something, whether I did it right or wrong, I knew how to adjust it myself. And that's when the game started slowing down for me. We teach kids to the point where, by the end of the first summer with us or the second year, they would understand why they're doing things. Because once you do that, then you become a whole lot better player, and not just doing it because some coach is telling you to step this way and step that way. So for me, that's the most beneficial thing that you can get from Men in the Trenches.
For any young kid out there that wants to become an NFL lineman like you were at one point, what's that word of advice, or 2 words of advice, or 3, whatever it may be, how many words of advice it may be, but what would it be that you would offer up to these young kids that would like to become what you became at the NFL level?
Well, first of all, we don't even talk much about the NFL at Men in the Trenches. My message to the kids is try to use football to get an education. Don't let football use you. And if you ever get an opportunity to be good enough to play on Sundays, and that's a blessing for the man upstairs. But our number one message is, use football to get an education and work on your game. And of course, I remind the kids, I don't care if you can block 6 guys on every play, but if your grades aren't good enough, there's nothing much we can do for you. So I remind them that being good in the classroom is number one, but at the same time, you work on your game on the football field so you can get that education for free.
Now, Jesse, we'll leave you with this. The current version of the San Francisco 49ers are led by Kyle Shanahan. There seems to be a franchise quarterback, unfortunately went down due to injury, but a lot of people are excited about the future of the Niners. What's your take now on the current organization?
Well, I think we're on the right track. We have a general manager that's a Super Bowl champion in John Lynch that understands what it is to build a championship franchise. Kyle Shanahan, believe it or not, was a ball boy when I played. Of course, his dad was my last coordinator with the 49ers. And Sean McVay, grew up under the 49ers. He was too young for me to talk to. I spoke to the dad. John McVay's grandfather was a general manager for all of our 5 Super Bowls. So it just goes to show you the power of the West Coast, because these young kids learn the West Coast, from under Bill Walsh and their dads working there. But I think Kyle is one of the brightest young minds in the game, along with Sean McVay. I think we were optimistic going in, but of course, when you lose your quarterback, and we signed a running back from Minnesota that was going to help our system, and he blew his ACL before the season started in McKinnon. That's the breaks, and you got to fight through it. I think we need a pass rusher because we've lost a lot of close games. And for you to close those close games, you look at Khalil Mack, you look at Aaron Donald, those guys make plays to close out games. We don't quite have that pass rusher to do that yet, and that's part of building, and we're going to try to look at the draft to get something done.
And Jesse, I'll leave you with this. It's almost Thanksgiving. We're all thinking about food. And, I'm only a 4'8" dude. I'll just leave that out there for you to consume and whatnot. And so my diet and my caloric intake is a lot different than these linemen out there that are playing at the high school level, the collegiate level, the NFL level. I wanted to ask you a really random question here, but what did your diet consist of when you were playing in the NFL?
Honestly, I wasn't one that had weight problems. So, there wasn't a strict diet that I was on because I worked out so hard that I'd burn it all off anyways. But I played at 305 pounds. But, during Thanksgiving, I ate everything that was on the table.
There you go. I love that. That's awesome. I do too. Different body sets and sizes, but hey, and we're hungry, right? It's Thanksgiving. Consume all that turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing that you can, right? Whatever's on the table there.
Yes, sir. You're a lineman, so you better enjoy your food, and that food will help you with your strength on the football field.
Well, another question I just thought of really quick, because Legacy Football is a sponsor for us here at the DSP Network. What are you doing now with Legacy Football specifically, moving forward?
Well, moving forward, I'm working with Legacy Football with Justin. He does a lot of the skill things, but I think he wanted to emphasize adding linemen to his events. And I think I'm going to be working with Justin and Legacy Football, and also fundamentals, technique, and integrity lineman organization that I'm going to work with. And it's one of those things where I look forward to working with them, share some of our ideas, some of the lineman tournaments that I've held here on the West Coast. It's all about spreading the word and making sure that kids are giving a chance to work on their game, basic fundamentals to start with, so that they can increase the chances of getting a free education playing this game.
Jesse, thanks for all the time, and have a great Thanksgiving.
Same to you guys, man. Have a great Thanksgiving.
And that was Jesse Sapolu, who was a legendary lineman for all those years at the San Francisco 49ers, as a part of 4 of those Super Bowl championship teams for the Niners, who were 5-0 in Super Bowl appearances at one point. Then they lost to Jim Harbaugh and Colin Kaepernick. Jim Harbaugh better not lose this game today. The game at OSU in the Horseshoe, though. But anyways, I digress, as that was great stuff. Great insight and time from Jesse Sapolu, who shared all those stories about his time learning under Bill Walsh, George Seifert, playing alongside Joe Montana, and then later Steve Young. And about that transition, Doc, to be so lucky to go from Joe Montana at quarterback to Steve Young. My God, how good and how lucky you have to be to have that great of and easy of a transition there at quarterback.
And it speaks to, like he said, the organization that you got to build. And I think that's where the Lions are lacking. The next step for them to evolve into an organization with a storied history like the Niners is to put together not only a great head coach, not only a great general manager, but it kind of seems like the assistants for the Lions are subpar. They're just not good enough that nobody's going to take on Jim Bob Cooter if he gets fired. Nobody's going to put him as a head coach. The defensive coordinator, Paul Pasqualoni, is going to be in retirement in Florida before he takes another job. So that's where I think the next step for the Lions needs to be is You got to bring up and develop the next young group of guys. And that's where I think Bill Belichick, unfortunately, maybe the knock on him is that some of those young guys that he developed didn't go across the league and didn't do great things. Look at the Niners. Mike Holmgren wins a Super Bowl. Mike Shanahan wins multiple Super Bowls. John Gruden wins a Super Bowl. Multiple Super Bowl caliber coaches in one organization. And then you got 2 great Super Bowls, a great system. That's what it takes in order to have 20 years of winning 10-plus games. And you got to think, Vito, are you patient? That's the question I'm going to leave you with before we get out of here on this week's episode. Are you patient enough to see this development of the Lions through? Because if you keep turning over staffs every 4 years, it's going to be tough to develop an organization. Right now, I'm not seeing it with Matt Patricia, especially when you bring in your boy and your defense the first year isn't that good.
Paul Pasqualoni, I mean, God. He was at Syracuse. He failed at Syracuse pretty much as a head coach. He wouldn't even get a collegiate job at this point. So think about that. He's your defensive coordinator. You couldn't do any better than that. And your first gig as an NFL head man, you have better connections than that. Anyways, I digress as, you know what, I think you have to look at it with the big picture and these kind of lens. That it's a process. It takes time to build a winner, and maybe they are starting to build something with the Lions that is going to take time. Maybe 4 years even, which it took for Michigan with Harbaugh. Look at, it's year number 4 for Harbaugh. Last year, year number 3 under Harbaugh was not even close to a terrific season. It was a hugely disappointing campaign, wasn't it? 8-5, including an Outback Bowl loss, to South Carolina in that bowl game. That was a bad season for Michigan, for the Michigan faithful to have to endure through. Guess what, though? In year number 4, now Harbaugh and company have a chance to win a Big Ten East Division championship and Big Ten championship. So it takes time. So I think you have to look at the Michigan situation almost and say, well, how about the Lions? Poor old Lions. Get no benefit of the doubt ever. But you know what? I get it. Fans have been giving the Lions the benefit of the doubt for how many years? And that's why Christy Carpo jumped off the bandwagon, as she said on the latest edition of the Check the Report podcast. So I don't blame her for jumping off the bandwagon. I've already started to. I'm 1 foot off the cliff already myself. But I think you have to give it a little bit of time and see what the Lions do next season before you officially jump off the cliff.
Great episode. You can follow Vito at Vito Jerome. You can follow the network at Detroit Podcast. You can follow the show at 2 Bad Hombres. Thanks, everybody. We want to give special thanks again to our sponsors, Top Cat Sales and the Legacy Football Organization. We'll be doing great work with them on Sunday, 12:30, tomorrow. Definitely check it out on Fox Sports Detroit, the Legacy Football Organization High School Senior All-Star Game. Awesome stuff there.
All the unis outfitted by who?
Top Cat Sales.
Look at that, baby. Fine sponsor once again on the DSP Network and this very episode of 2 Bad Hombres.
See everybody next week. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And I'll begrudgingly say it, go blue.
There we go. Love it. Adios.